Good morning. Dr. Jose Medina from the University of Florida, Gainesville, Florida, educator, researcher, inventor of sorts, and a fine dentist. We want to welcome you to this program put on by the International College of Dentists. And we want to look forward to the next couple hours of having a conversation with Jose Medina, who he is, from whence he came, and what he's been doing all these years and what his plans are for the future. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let's begin a little bit with your background. I know you're from Puerto Rico, were born there, and give us just a little of your family background, Jose, and how you came to the mainland.
Well, my mother came from France. She was born in Puerto Rico, but from French ancestry. My father was born in Puerto Rico, but he came from Spain. His ancestors did. They met down there, and that's where I was born, in Santurce, Puerto Rico. We always had a real fine home life. My mother died when I was very young, so my father was the one who raised me and my brother. There were only two of us in that area. My father was a pharmacist, studied at the University of Pennsylvania, and he wanted to make sure that I followed through in the health profession somewhere. So he always motivated me to do the best I could and to get involved in some area in service to people.
Did you ever have a thought of being a pharmacist and follow behind your father? Or?
Not a pharmacist, no. But the thought was more in the delivery of care rather than in the fulfillment of prescriptions. And so I went through the normal grammar school, elementary school, and high school, and applied to Johns Hopkins.
At what age?
Oh, do you have to ask
yes,
that?
Yes.
Well, I was accepted at Johns Hopkins at the age of 16.
16 years old,
yes.
Coming to the mainland.
Yes.
Yes.
On my own.
On your own.
Never been away from home. Put me on a plane and flying all the way up to Baltimore, Maryland.
It's quite a change for a young man.
Yes.
Okay, let's go through when you were at school at Johns Hopkins.
Well, I majored in biology with a minor in chemistry.
Okay.
So I had a lot of fun. We were on an accelerated program. So all our, quote, semester courses were constricted into trimesters, but the same volume of material. So it was quite strenuous and very demanding. But I was able to go through all my chemistries and all the biologies and went from there to dental school.
Did you make your decision to go into dentistry while you were at Johns Hopkins?
Yes. And I'm going to pick on you a little bit right now because it isn't John, it's John's.
Well, it slipped out. I understand that. I, above all, should know that, but it just didn't come out.
That was ingrained in us when we were in college.
Yes, I usually say John's, and we'll probably delete that from the film, or we may leave it in for a laugh.
Oh, sure. I thought you wanted it to be informal.
That's right. So after you finished your schooling at Johns Hopkins, then you went on to the University of Maryland.
Yes.
Baltimore College of Dentistry.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the University of Maryland is not the oldest building, but it was the first dental school in the world. I don't know whether you're aware of that historically. And the Baltimore College of Dental Surgery was the first dental school in the world, started in Baltimore. And that merged with the dental department of the University of Maryland back in the early 1910s, 15. And it became then that University of Maryland College of Dentistry.
Okay. And while you were in dental school, then did you make a decision at that time to either go into education or go into private practice, or was it at a later time?
No, my intent was to go into private practice, and but I went ahead and joined in the service I was in the service as one of the V-12 residents for a year. And then that program stopped, and I joined the United States Public Health Service as a commissioned officer. And I'm still in the U.S. Public Health Service Reserve, in the inactive reserve. But I wanted to go into practice. That was my first goal. And it wasn't until I was a senior in dental school that the dean of the school and the chairman of operative kept after me to consider academia as one of the, and I said, well, I still want to go into practice. So, but they talked me into coming back and do some teaching. And I guess maybe fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, depends on how you look at it.
Fortunately for the people who have had an opportunity to study under you, and fortunately for the profession of dentistry, you did go into education and teaching. I can attest to that. So, right when you got out of the service, then you came back and started your teaching career.
I started my practice first.
Oh, you started?
Yeah.
Oh, you really did start your
Yes,
practice?
I practiced in Maryland about 20 hours a week for about 20 years in my own practice.
And taught part-time and practiced part-time?
Well, I taught semi-full-time, and my hours were about...
There's only 24 hours in the day now.
I know that, but my weekly hours were close to 60 to 80 hours a week.
Okay. That's normal. I've been reading about it. That's normal. I picked that up.
Yeah, I had both.
Uh-huh. Well.
And it got to, at one point, it became evident that I just couldn't continue that. But I wanted to ensure that I was able to practice what I taught. That it wasn't just saying I took this out of a textbook. I wanted to be able to say, this is the way it can be done, and I did it.
And should be done.
And should be done.
Right.
But at one point in time, it became evident that I just couldn't continue that kind of a schedule, even though I just loved it and enjoyed my private practice. I had to make a decision.
Yes.
And I felt trying to assess where I could perhaps be of greater service to the profession and where I could be of more help. And I felt that maybe in education I might be able to help others, learn how to do them a little bit easier and better.
I have a little quote here I want to quote from a letter that was written to the University of Florida, which we'll get to later. But right at this time, I think it's a good place to say this. And he said, my first recollection of Dr. Jose Medina goes back to September 1, 1949, on my first day at the Baltimore College of Dental Surgery. As I walked into the main clinic, I noticed this individual whom I've judged to be the perfect young dentist. He was impeccably dressed and starched as he guided the freshmen to their assignments with an attitude so professional that I thought that I would like to emulate him. Throughout the following years, as he lectured to us, I came to realize that his lectures were always carefully and outstandingly prepared with attention to detail and fresh didactic materials. Later on, as a clinic floor instructor becoming increasingly demanding of his students, he was nonetheless careful of not being oppressive. He gave us a desire to try to do our very, very best. Now that's a quote. And I think that's a very fine compliment to you. And as a young, here you are, a young instructor and a freshman coming in and sees this at that time. And you know who said that. Alfredo Brigato.
Yes, my good friend from Panama.
Right. But let's take up then when you started in the operative department and some of your thoughts in education at that time and your teaching of these young people and your influence on them.
Oh, well, I don't know how to begin. Or the first thing that really bothered me when I started dental school as a freshman, which I think affected later on in life when it deals with the University of Florida. But I was, the schedule, in those days, biochemistry and microbiology and all these courses were pretty well fixed. It was a step-lock curriculum. And I had gone through all the sciences at Johns Hopkins. I asked our faculty at Maryland when I was a freshman, even though you seemed like I'm very reserved, I was a little bit of a rebel-rouser perhaps.
Oh.
But I asked, I said, do I need to take biochemistry all over again? I had the author of your textbook I had as a teacher in Johns Hopkins, and it's the same textbook. So do I have to buy the textbook? Yes, you must buy the textbook, you must take the course. I said, can I take a post-test and show you that I have had it? No, you cannot, you must do it. So, can you see my dilemma? Here I am going into a professional school and finding out that I couldn't pre-test a course. And it became a little bit boring. Of course, I applied myself. I went through hardly any studying that I did in biochemistry because I'd had all that before. So, you know, the grades reflected it and there was no problem. But the point is that I thought to myself, someday we're going to need to change the philosophy of professional school, that it needs to be handled more as a graduate program, and students need to be treated in a different fashion. Putting that aside, because that affected my decision to go to Florida down the road from Maryland. Then going into the education, that was one of the things that was a factor in deciding to go and see where I can also help develop a new concept, new approaches to education. When we were students, the usual pattern, and perhaps it didn't happen to you, but it happened to us, the faculty meant well. I had some excellent teachers. I could give you the names of my idols and so on. But then there were also those who felt the dental student was like a little worm crawling on the floor, and that you had to do everything you could to keep him or keep her in that position, that they couldn't ask too many questions that they shouldn't ask. And I felt, gee, there needs to be a better dialogue. So when I had the opportunity to start my teaching, to a full time, I began to apply, if you will, the concerns that and the experiences that I had gone through, and I said, I need to change this area somehow. Maybe I can make a difference. Even though I'm only one, I might be able to make a little difference. So I began to treat all students pretty much the same. I had no favorites. I expected a certain level of achievement and proficiency from each one. If they couldn't do it, I would ask and let me know, and I would show them, and then I would expect them to follow through. I didn't needle them or pick on them. I teased them into getting to do the best that they could within the confines of their abilities and knowledge. I try to tell them, never be satisfied with being second best. Try always to do the best that you know how, and every day is going to be different. So I try to give them a little motivation, and also that they were all the same. By that I mean that they all had the same abilities, the same skills, same judgment. Some could develop them faster, but that they had to apply themselves. And I really try to imbue in them the concept that learning could be fun, if they let it be fun, and so could teaching. Well, of course, this was unheard of, and I used to get a little ribbon from my colleague teachers. But I just decided that's the way I'm going to handle my...
You wanted it.
And the way I was going to do it. And so I don't know what else you want me to...
Well, that's one of the keys I wanted you to bring out,
okay.
because that changed a lot of the educational system back there, I know. But I had the same experience when I was in school. We had one or two men that had thinking like you, but most of them, they kind of suppressed you.
And I don't understand why.
I don't
why
know
they
either.
would want to do that. Because these youngsters are graduates of pre-dental and college. Some have a master's degree. They're intelligent human beings. And they need to be motivated, not compressed.
Well, I think you must have been successful because you stayed at the Baltimore College of Dentistry for several years and continue to elevate in the ranks. Just go ahead along with what happened as you were there a few years. We'll finally get you to Florida.
Yeah. It might take a while to
Yeah, it'll take a while.
Well, I did rise through the ranks in academia with the proper credentials, you know, doing some research and teaching and service. And in 2 years, I was assistant professor, and in 2 more years, I was associate professor, and 2 years after that, I was full professor. I mean, it was a fairly fast, which in a way was a little stressful, if you know. It's a little stressful in that to have the responsibility at the age was not, when all my staff was older than I was, right. If you know what I know. But it went through all right. I was head of the department quite early in my career, and so I was able to do some additional changes in philosophy but always meeting resistance from some of the other faculty. There was one other young faculty in the Department of Dental Biomaterials and prosthodontics who he and I felt pretty strongly about. He felt the same philosophy. And I can remember one time we spent extra hours, just developing a new concept on how to, you know, teach an integrated curriculum between operative and materials, and we had a whole thing proposed and all, and of course the faculty felt that it was too much of a change, so they decided they didn't want to pursue it. So we had ideas about curriculum from way back.
Well, human nature resists change.
Oh, they do.
But you were persistent enough that, and with the change that you were proposing, which was good, it had to come to the top and had to become a reality. And you mentioned something in the first that you started talking about this, that you mentioned the word service. And everything that I read about you and everything that I know about you, that's been one of the, probably a prime word in your life is service to others. And that has to be one of the main reasons that you have achieved the stature that you have in your profession, because of service to others and not for yourself.
I wish I could convey and instill in every student that that's the primary purpose for your existence. I think if you are able to lead your life looking what can you do for others, whether it's in the health professions, whatever you learn is not for your own benefit, it's to provide a better service. If you learn a new technique in dentistry or a new approach to rendering care, you don't do it to say, hey, I'm better than you are. No, you do it to be able to do a better service for your patient. And if you could do that and share that ability and share that knowledge and share that your skills with other people, boy, your rewards are tremendous. Never try to, in my opinion, you should never try to aim at what is there for you as an individual, for yourself, but is what can I do for others. And I think your rewards are secondary, but they come.
I think this probably comes from your background in your religious faith, I'm sure, because I know you're very, very strongly in that, and it all ties together. Well, it's that, your personality, your approach, and everything. It's just why I have stacks and reams of things here. Everybody says the same thing. What you have given to them, it just changed their life in dentistry. And fortunately, that they had the opportunity to be with you, study under you, or just like I am, conversing with you. I feel it's a great honor on my part to get to do this. We've known each other for years, but never have had this opportunity. So.
Well, I hope I don't disappoint you.
No, you're not. No way. No way.
Because I get awfully nervous when I'm before a camera.
Well, you look nervous. I know that.
You can.
Even though you were were busy full-time and all this other, you had time to develop study clubs, which is, again, you were doing service for others. Now, why did you get so involved in study club development?
Oh, my. This, it goes back a little further. When I graduated from dental school, I was no different than most senior dental students, where you felt, gee, why did I learn about this and that? Why do I have to continue learning? I'm going to throw away my rubber dam. I'm going to throw away all the things that I learned, and I'm going to do my practice the way I want to do it. I was no different. Because, you know, you have faculty who say, oh, you do it while you're here, but when you're in practice, you don't have to. You can discard it. Maybe you didn't have those faculty. I had some. Or you do it this way, but when you get in practice, there's a whole bunch of shortcuts you can take, and you do it different. So I started my practice with a philosophy of saying, I don't need all this other things. But I was fortunate that in 1949, just a year out in practice, I was having fun in practice. I went to a meeting in Philadelphia, a dental meeting. And at that meeting, I met a young man, well, young, when I look at it in this vein today, to me, he was older than I was, so he was much older than I was by about 5 years or so. But I met him at the meeting from a fellow by the name of Collins from Royal, Virginia. And he said to me, you know, sometimes you meet someone for the first time, and there's a certain charisma or a certain chemistry that flows that you say, gee, I like that fellow. And so after the second day of the meeting, he said, Jose, he says, I'd like to take you to a study club meeting. I said, what's that? He said, well, I'd like you to be my guest. And you can come down to Front Royal, and then from there we'll drive to the study club. I said, you will enjoy it. You'll see people that you've never met before. And I finally, I said, he kept insisting, and I said, okay, I'll be there, and I'll meet you, you know, when the time of the meeting. Before we parted, I said to him, by the way, where is this meeting? He says, Omaha, Nebraska. And I said, Omaha? I said, you must be joking. He says, no, I'm not, but you promised to go. And I said, yes, I can't go back on my promise. So came that Thanksgiving, the week before Thanksgiving, when apparently the meeting was held at Creighton University, and the school closed. So therefore the area was open for the study clubs. So I drove to Front Royal, Virginia. I got together with Dr. Collins. He got in his Jaguar, and I thought, boy, he is a successful person. You know, I'm just a fellow out of school. I had a little old Ford.
Yeah.
Anyway, we drove, and I can tell you it took us 20 hours. We alternated driving, 20 hours to drive from Front Royal, Virginia to Omaha, Nebraska. We kept dropped all night, because I got there about 4, and we were there about the next day. Got to the hotel, cleaned up, went to the meeting. I tell you, that meeting just changed it didn't change it completely, but it began to have a tremendous influence on my professional life. Because I began to see what one could do in practice if we had the right philosophy, and you began to see that you must continue to be a student, and that you not only need to learn knowledge, but in dentistry you got to learn skills, and you got to maintain them. You either do it or you repeat your same mistakes. So study club was the ability to not only gain some additional knowledge, but also increase and enhance your ability skills-wise, the artistic part. And then put them together, they share your judgment. And that's basically what this is all about, is, you know, knowledge, skills, and judgment is what you have in dentistry. But it was there that I met the real leaders in dentistry, and they influenced me tremendously. like George Hollenbach was a member of the study group. This is a Woodbury study club.
Woodbury, I was going to say.
Yes. George Hollenbach, Lester Myers. I mean, I could name you, drop the names like Harry True, Miles Markley. They all just guided me, and they invited me back as a guest and as an operator. I couldn't wait to get back to the office, and boy, then it began to cost me. My whole office pattern changed. I had to change my philosophy, retrain my assistants, buy a new instrument. It was a tremendous drop in
Start to get back to basics.
Back to basics again. But then all of a sudden, you know, it's amazing what it did for my patients and what it did for my whole staff. And I went back to the Woodbury Study Club twice a year, and I operated. Miles Markley was on right there watching me. George Hollenbach became a real delightful friend. Harry True from California. They're just people that just had a real, developed a real sensitivity for their philosophy and they taught me a lot. And they taught me a great deal more in philosophy. Norman Olson, you know, well, I could go on, but that was the beginning.
That was your beginning, and
Yes.
then you felt that what you could give to others.
And of course, it was very, very well known that there were no study clubs of that nature east of the Mississippi. And I thought to myself, gee, it must be a way that we could get some of the youngsters interested, because what a delightful way to learn. And when I had the opportunity, I tried to encourage the formation, and I was successful in a few areas to get some of these done.
Well, I noticed you started the U.S. Navy Restorative Group.
Oh,
Instrumental in that.
yes,
And,
at Bethesda.
uh-huh.
But that was Bill Ferguson. He was the leading
Well,
guy, but he asked me to help him out.
He
And
knew who to get to do the work. I know Bill.
well, I was just only a few miles away, and he figured he could get me very easily.
Yeah,
Yes.
But-
They're celebrating their 30th year next spring
that's great.
of being a study group.
But you've been involved with that along with your other duties all these years, for 30 years or more. And you maintain this pace, and you go and teach. And not only with your full-time position at the University of Florida now, but you manage to have time to go out and do all these other things. And I know you've taken on a new job with the International College of Dentists as our regent. From, let's see, that's from the 5th, is that the 5th district?
The fifth
district,
district, yes.
And why did you accept that with all these other things that you have to do? Put you on the spot.
Well, you know, it's basically the same concept. Apparently, the International College feels that I can be of some help, or they wouldn't, number one, you know, ask me or nominate me for that. And perhaps I might be able to do some good, so that or contribute something to the college. And I'm very close to the college in terms of all over the past, since I became a fellow, what was it, in 1971, over 20 years, I've been involved in helping develop international.
Come on, this is what I'm trying to get you to start talking about, is developing the South American section.
Oh,
You-
well, that was at the request of the college.
I understand that, and that's why things have gone, and you are now a regent. It's not what you're going to be doing, but what you've done in the past.
Well, I don't look at it that way.
Well, that was an incentive, but we know you will work more, too.
Well, but I look at it from a different angle. You see, if I look at becoming a regent as a reward for what I have done, let me finish.
Okay.
Then I wouldn't look at it in the same category. See, I don't look at it as something that is in recognition of what I have put forth. I look at it as a new challenge of what other things we might do in the future. And if I can be of help in that direction, that's where I find myself.
I don't think we give away those regencies in reward. I think we give them people
I
that
didn't
know
think
that
you
will work, and have worked in the past and will be. We know that. Well, let's go back to the late the late 70s, 77, 78,
Okay.
when you went down and spent 3 weeks down in South America for the college. And
Let me see if I can recollect that part. I think at the time, I believe it was Frank Kenward who asked me if he knew that I had some contacts in South America, because I had been there visiting I'm participating in programs since 1960. I had been involved in some of their development. And he said that the college had a lot of members in different countries, but that they were really not totally organized, and they didn't know about the politics and what have you. So he asked me if I would go down, and I was going down anyway for another programs, a program that I had in Sao Paulo, in operative. So I went down, took my wife, Patty and I went down and went to Venezuela, I think six countries, Venezuela and Brazil, Paraguay, Argentina, Chile, Peru. And in each of the countries I met with some of the fellows of the college, except Venezuela. We could never get together with the people in Venezuela. And we began to formulate and try to find out why, what would be the hindering devices that would prevent them from putting together a complete South American section rather than to be an independent country. And I put all this together and found out the politics involved, and I made a proposal to the International College, a report on that visit. And I think that's the way the section got started. I think the regions approved it.
right, through your efforts, see, that's the thing. It was all your, to somebody to go down there and spend that time and energies to get it all to meld together, which you did, and took time out of your busy life, and now we have a South American section.
And it's moving out very nicely. And now, of course, about 3 or 4 years ago, they were floundering around. And again, Paul Loftling, I think, was the president of the International College, and he said, I'd like to go down and rekindle their enthusiasm. So, we went down.
Who did he take with him?
So he says, you need to go. I said, oh, my.
That's right.
I'm in trouble again.
No, you get us out of trouble again.
So we went on back down, and it was the first time a president of the college had visited South America. And it just got him so emotional, and so that they began to reorganize, and out of that came in reworking of their bylaws, and Dick Schaefer went down and got it all squared away.
Well, it's amazing. The more I know about you, the more I talk with you, that in 24 hours a day, the amount of energy that you put out and the things that you do and the areas you cover is just an amazing thing. Just what you do just physically. And it takes time to do all this, and it takes organization, and you're very organized. I'm discombobulated. You're organized. Well, now you've got that. Now here again, we're going to talk about some other things that you were involved in their organization, and the American Academy of Operative Dentistry. Now that wasn't in existence until someone got an idea.
Well. This goes back a number of years ago, where I was chairing a committee on the future of the Academy of Gold Foil Operators, and I was chairing a committee to looking at that back in the late '60s, early, somewhere in that area. And after looking at all the pieces, the recommendation of the committee was that either the Foil Academy needed to expand its activity to attract and be cognizant of the broad, sort of the total operative dentistry, not just the one. Even though we had programs that involved perio and all the other things, it was dealing with a more limited kind of activity. The Foil Academy recognized that and they voted, surveys were made, that it was better to maintain that identity. And I can't say I'm blaming. I'm also a past president of the Foil Academy. I love them dearly. That they needed to maintain that identity, and that they felt strongly that perhaps another group ought to be formed to take care of all the needs of the younger dentists who had no place to go to learn about excellence and philosophy and rubber dam, and that were not interested in foils, you know, in compacted gum. So they actually, then I said, well, I already had been past president of the Foil Academy, and I said, well, do you mind if I began pushing and exploring that avenue? They said no. There was no. In fact, they passed a resolution endorsing that area and endorsing our pursuing it, and they even allocated us $200 to help us with postage.
$200.
Yeah, to do whatever we needed to do. So I sat down and I said, okay, I wanted to get 6 people on a paper committee. By that I mean that I could say these people geographically from all over the country are endorsing the concept of an Academy of Operative Dentistry. First one I talked to was Ralph Werner, and Ralph had been on my committee in the Foil Academy anyways. Ralph says, be delighted, because we also knew the need for, you know. And so that was from the Midwest. And I talked to Chuck Boshure from Texas in the Southwest. Vernetti from California. Floyd Hamstron from up in Seattle, in Burlington actually. Carl Monticelli from the Northeast, up in Massachusetts. And I figure I was down in Florida, so that covered. So that quote made my organizing committee, the Founders Committee. And I put together the letters, and I have all those copies at home, you know. I signed the letters, and I sort of chair in this special group endorsing the Academy, and requested. I mailed about 400 or 500 letters all over the world, asking. I sent a letter to all the members of the Foil Academy. I sent letters to all the dental schools, departments of operative dentistry, here and abroad, to inquire if there was any need in their opinion to establish an academy, and if there was, to let me know, and that we would have an organizational meeting in Chicago that following year, and if the response was positive, we would organize a meeting of the organizing. I received, there were only about 50 of the that did not respond. Everyone else was a positive response. So we called the meeting of the organizing group for a charter in the academy. For the Blackstone Hotel, 2nd floor, Ralph made the arrangements for that room, as he usually does all my arrangements. And I developed an agenda, and I asked David Granger to be the keynote speaker. And David, I have his original paper with all typing and all his handwritten notes, and because he gave it to me for corrections, and so I knew what he was going to talk about as a challenge to operative dentistry. And we had the organizational meeting. We had to move the room twice in the hotel because there were over 350 people showed up.
A wonderful turnout.
And the motion was made to charter the academy. They immediately began to say that they wanted me to be the first president. I said, no, I didn't organize this to be first president. No way. I said, you're out of order. I will not entertain it. We got Bill Ferguson to be the first president. And, well, it took 20 years before I became first president. They wouldn't ask me again. No, they had been asked, but I just hadn't been able to. I didn't want it to look as if that academy was organized just for me to get.
Wasn't Jose's academy.
Yeah, that's not. It's, it was a need and
for others.
For others, and
right.
now I did serve on the council. I went to all their council meetings and you know, talked. I was on their first scientific program twice that they asked me. You know, that's another. But nevertheless, that's the way it got started.
It was coincidental that you mentioned David Granger's name.
Yeah.
And David, bless his heart, he's not here to see this, but he's probably as much responsible for what we're doing today as any one individual. So when I saw an original tape that was made of him, and in the final note, Dick Adelson said, well, if 10 years from now we'll get together and see what you think and your prognosis of the future will be, see if it comes to pass. And of course David died and didn't have that opportunity.
Right.
But that was the stimuli to get our program going in the college, to interview gentlemen such as yourself and others who you will be boxed with
Yes.
in electronic tape. And another fine gentleman.
Oh, he was a fine,
and
fine
from
dentist.
Florida at the time. Well, you did the the Academy of Operative Dentistry, and then you had a development in the American Board of Operative Dentistry.
Well, that's it's a side issue. The Academy is the sponsoring agent academy for the board. From the beginning in the Academy, there was a feeling that there needed to be a certification program, a recognition of proficiency, not a diplomat. It wasn't a matter of desire to become a separate specialty. That was not it at all, but the need to provide a mechanism where your peers could assess your proficiency and recognize you as having achieved a level of excellence. And a committee had been functioning in the Academy of Operative Dentistry for a few years. And I was a part of that committee towards the latter part. Charlie Cartwright was a member of it. Gordon Christensen was chairman of it at one time. Jerry Charbonneau was also a member of it. I mean, there were quite a few people involved, but the committee met with the ADA staff to discuss the issues, and not to develop a specialty, you see, but it was just a certification kind of program. And it was under Woody Rupp's presidency that the committee reported, presidency of the Academy, that the committee reported to him that a board be established. And the council approved it. And the initial members of the board, the founding members, were elected by vote, secret ballot. They were to elect 20 clinicians from all over the country, some in academia, some in private practice, some in the service. And I happened to be one of the 20 that was elected. So was Bruce Smith and Floyd Hamstron and Bill Ferguson, and it's a whole bunch. And they asked me to serve as chairman pro tem of that board, of the committee that was formed. And at the first meeting, when we decided to organize it and develop the board, incorporate it and what have you, I was elected president of the board. And I was president, I guess, for 6 years. And if you try to get 20, you might say, prima donnas. By that, I don't mean it in any derogatory. They're all top-notch, good friends, delightful drivers. All of them strive towards excellence in their own way. All of them felt strongly of what the board had to have, and try to put all these thoughts together. There were many times when I would get up there, and the arguments and discussions, we would meet for all days at a time, 2 or 3 days. And I would finally say, okay, then if you don't like this final decision after all the votes are taken, this is what we're going to do. If you don't like it, you can impeach me, and I'll be delighted to step down. Well, they didn't take me up on it, but in any way.
No, I'm sure they didn't.
But we had a lot of fun developing it, and ended up, and we made sure that one thing that is critical in that board is that we decided that the founding members, which are those 20, they would not be certified. There would be no grandfathering clause. that the bylaws and the Constitution was so designed that in order for those founding, they would always be known as founding members.
Yes.
As a category in the membership of the board. But they would never be certified members unless they went through the exam and took the exam and became certified. So that I'm a founding member of that group, and that's my category of membership.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after a number of years, we also have decided that the founding members would not be able to serve on as officers or councilmen. They had to be certified people,
Mm-hmm.
to be run by the certified people. And that year came up 2 years ago. And right now, all the officers are certified. The group is moving very well.
Good.
One of our founding members went back and took the exam.
Wonderful.
And passed it, and he is not only a founding member, he's certified too. He's got a certified number.
That's great.
So it's that's another. We've had a lot of fun in trying to share and help out.
Well, as I say, you're busy, 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 busy. We might go into, you made a little note here, one of the most humorous things that you've encountered in your career in dentistry. Would that take more than 2 or 3 minutes? Or is it a longer story?
Well, one of the more, I guess you might be, no, it's not that long.
Okay.
The getting into it is longer, but one of my study clubs, the George Hollenbach Study Group, and I like to tell you about that one down the road, but
Okay.
nevertheless, the George Hollenbach Study Group, that's already in 32nd year of existence.
Uh-huh.
I asked one day for some compound and to help stabilize a clamp on a tooth. And they gave me a little piece of compound about that big. And I said, Lord have mercy, I can even heat it, with gloves on and try to. I said, why don't you get me a real good sized piece of compound? So the next day, they had gone back. They had taken one of the black compound for prosthesis. Yeah. They had cut him in strips, and they handed me a piece of compound that long, about 3 feet long, and I said, here's a piece of compound. Well, I just broke the house down. That was quite funny.
That's great.
That's one of the funny incidents.
Well, I thought we might end this first segment with a little levity, since we've been so serious during all this conversation. And we'll pick up with the involvement that you had at the University of Maryland on the development and the construction of the new school up there after we take our break.
Okay.
Okay? Bye. Jose, we were going to talk a little bit about the involvement that you had at the University of Maryland in the development of their new dental facility. And I want to get you to say a few words about that before I take you down south to the University of Florida. Just how that came about at Maryland.
Well, just like in any other institution, a dean needs to have somebody who can coordinate and attend the meetings and coordinate program input from faculty and pass it on to the architects and relate back and forth and keep track of all that. So I was asked by the dean if I would assume that role while I still was chairman of operative and director of clinics, but finally he agreed to let me off on some of my other duties. Anyway, he asked me to be the coordinator for the new facility at Maryland. So I managed that. meeting with the faculty and developing some new ideas anyway that needed to be done. Primary and critical was that we used to work on an open clinic concept in the old facility.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everyone agreed and pressed for individualized kind of operatories or cubicles for each student. So we did push for that, trying to push for some more integrated curriculum so that it didn't end up with little pieces here and there, but try to coordinate some of their efforts. And quite a few of those changes were implemented in the program input. Then the building was designed to accommodate that. So we ended up with individual cubicles in the Maryland facility, and there were some integrated laboratories work and integrated programs of that nature. Now, that's been, that was back in 1965, 66, 67, somewhere in that area. I think by 5 years ago, that building at Maryland, the basic structure is still there, but they have remodeled again, you know, and they have even improved tremendously on what was there in terms with newer concepts and newer approaches. So it's even better looking now than before.
It's time goes by so quickly. You talk about 1967, and all of a sudden it's 25 years later.
I know.
And it just goes by before you can hardly
Yeah, it was
breathe.
25 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, shortly after you did that, and I'm sure that phase of your career took, I don't know, a year, 2 years maybe, to develop all this. I don't know.
Yeah, it's about 2.5, 3 years.
I watched them do that here at the University of Oklahoma, and there's a lot of planning and replanning and redesigning, and so I have a little bit of an idea of what you went through. But shortly after you completed that, didn't you make a move to the University of Florida?
Yes.
And what prompted you, or what was the motivation to make that move?
You're having a cue from a previous. Well, that was an interesting time in my life. Here I was at Maryland. I've been served on the faculty for over about 20 years, and getting ready to be vested in my retirement up there. I think pretty much have gone as far as I could. And Ed Ackle, who had just been appointed dean at Florida. He had been appointed dean in October, and that same month he called me and he said, I need you to consider being my associate dean. This is 1966 when he approached me. And I said, gee, what are we talking about? This is starting a brand new school. I'd like you to be totally in charge of the program development and coordinate the facility. And I said, basically the program too? Yes, I said, yes. I said, okay. And so I came on down to Florida, went on down to Florida in October, met with Ed, met with the provost, met with the advisory committee of the practitioners in the state of Florida. And by January, I had accepted the associate deanship. And I flew down every month, a couple times a month, until July. And in the meantime, we built a house and everything ready we moved July 67. So in 6 months, we
on the go,
on the go. But in any event, what triggered me to go down and to accept that position of associate dean were several factors. One, the ability that we would be able to develop a curriculum from scratch.
Right.
No history. No, we've always done it this way, therefore why not continue doing it, where you could look at the good things and try to improve and do it better. So it was a mechanism to say, okay, here's an opportunity that maybe comes once in a lifetime, and then develop a program to meet that, and then the building to fit into that. So that's why one of the basic reasons that I went and began to work that concept into the curriculum so that a student could be pre-tested. Remember my discussion dealing with what I had when I was a freshman? Well, finally the opportunity came where we could develop where the modular concept of curriculum could be developed so that there will be integrated courses that, that it wouldn't be taking a little thing over here, a little piece over here, and there were repetition in the curriculum, that you could streamline it to the point where the student could advance according to the particular knowledge and background that they had. So that was quite a challenge, and I couldn't pass it up. Secondly, it was a chance to recruit faculty, you see, that would be with the same philosophy to begin with, that could help develop the program and help develop this concept of treating students at a level of professional student, graduate student, different kind of approach, not the holding them under the thumb and saying you're pretty low in this status. That they were a member of the profession from the time they started dental school, and that they were a different level of progress or knowledge or skills development, but that they were just a part of it, and therefore they would be treated the same as any other professional with the same kind of understanding. So philosophically, that's the way I used to. Now, of course, fortunately, what happened was I was there in '67, and by 1969, Dr. Ackle was asked to become the vice president for the health center. And I became the dean, so that I went on through with the same process. And there was, in those days, there was no search for a dean, and no, the person just said, you take over.
Here it is.
Here it is. And so, because the two of us have been there for 2 years by ourselves, our first group of faculty were beginning to come in that first batch of 5. One of them was Harold Stanley, and some of our who had
Well, you had a good situation to make some choices and to invite people that you knew would fit into your program.
Right, and that was extremely, there was just a real time of joy in the administration, if you will.
Yes.
The fact that you had that opportunity to not only develop a sound program, as you saw it, that would help and enhance education, but ability to bring in the people to do it. And we were able to recruit someone outstanding, and we still have most of them on the faculty.
So this was a dream that you'd been carrying for 25, 30 years. And
yes, well, I had been considered for 3 other deanships. Among them was one in my home country, and in Puerto Rico. And the Chancellor, Dr. Benitez, had been up to Washington, looked me up, and wanted me to start the dental school down there. And this goes back even before this time. And I went down to look at and talk to him. And finally, I gave him a report. I said, there are about half a dozen things that need to be changed. If you change them politically, I said, I'll come. But if you don't change them, I'm not coming. There's no point in trying to do something.
Right.
In those days, the dental school was under the College of Medicine. That was the organizational system. I said, in order to advance and enhance the profession, you've got to do some changing here. And there was a little political maneuvering going on. And so Dr. Benitez was able to change 3 of the 6 things, but not all of them. And I said, well, no way. I'm not going to get into an area where I'll be frustrated. I said, life is too short to be doing these things. So that was, and then later on there was a second opportunity. He asked me again to come down.
Oh, back to Puerto Rico.
But again, things haven't changed.
Yeah.
The school has moved great.
Well, just not according to your philosophy.
But not
though.
according to my philosophy. There was no point in my saying that just because I'm from Puerto Rico, I'd love to have been able to do it. But it had to be able to fit in with, you know, incorporate what I needed to. In any event, so Florida became a real challenge and a real opportunity.
Well, you had that,
So I enjoyed
evidently
that.
you had that freedom at Florida that you could pretty well do
Yes.
anything within reason for the benefit of the student. And that's what it was all about, for the benefit of the student. Here we go back to benefit others and your service to others. And all of your life, it's just been Jose does for others, Jose serves, and this is what you said. That's why I had so much difficulty with you getting you here. You didn't want to talk about yourself and let people know, because people do know, but we need to get this recorded for history, because 25, 30 years from now, when neither one of us will probably be around, the name Jose Medina will come up and somebody will say, I've heard that name. We'll pull the tape and say, now we know about him. And we see him and we hear him in his own words, and that's why this is so important, to get you to talk a little bit about yourself, and I just have to drag it out of you.
but let me address one issue there, because it sounds like I'm, you know, no man is an island unto himself.
Oh, that's true.
No person. And I think when you look at it in that context, you need to understand that I've had a wonderful family, and I think I've had two. I've been married twice. My first wife, the mother of the three children, both children, they're all adults and
they're
grown,
still
and
your
they're
children.
delightful. They're still children, you know,
they're
but
your
they
children.
are beautiful children. And she died of cancer back in '75, and I remarried another wonderful gal, Patricia, and you know, we've been married ever since then. So I've been married twice, one because under death, and both have been just beautiful, wonderful, supportive spouses. Well, I think what I need to say in that respect is that when you do all these things professionally and what have you, everybody has to know that there is and maybe people don't accept it as such, but there is a back support, encouragement, understanding.
True.
That is so critical for you and me, especially for me, to be able to do the things that I've done.
True.
I don't do it by myself. My children have to understand. My spouse, Patricia right now, and Betty at the time. They all have to be.
Particularly at home, that has to be very supportive.
And when you become chairman of a group or president of a group, well, you know, your spouse is a part of that. I mean, you're basically, they have to be involved.
She has to share you, too.
And share.
That's right. She has to share.
So
I understand this.
all that. And I think one other factor that perhaps people, I hope they do realize, is that I have a very strong faith. And that I'm not preaching faith. All I'm saying is that, you know, I never go into an area by myself.
True.
I'm not a lone individual. I always have someone looking over my shoulders.
Good.
And with that kind of faith, and I learned that years ago, it used to be funny. In Florida, after, well, it's a long story, but maybe that's not quite that important.
No, it is important.
After my wife Betty died, I was dean at the time, and I resigned as dean, really. And people don't know this to me. You might as well find it out now. She didn't know it either, that I had resigned, because I needed to, my priorities were at home. And I couldn't continue as dean, you know, devoting all the time to the job when I had her at home. So I resigned as dean and took that particular leave. And she died a year later, after my resignation. Then the vice president of the health center asked me to be an assistant vice president in charge of planning for the health center at the Florida and operations of the concept. And delightful. At first it was Ed Ackle, but then Ed Ackle left, and we had another vice president who was just a charming individual. He's since died, but he was became a real good friend. He used to call me the Henry Kissinger of the health center. I don't know whether that's good or bad.
Well, I don't know either.
But he said that I could call a meeting of department chairman in medicine and dentistry or whoever were involved, and I could get him into a room, and they could get him to open up and discuss things, come to agreement, and settle the political issues, even though I was not one of the same.
Yeah.
So I helped out in that direction, too.
Good, good. Well, you got just a little ahead of me because we were going to... That's
sorry.
fine. I'm glad you brought it in there because it's very important and very noteworthy, and you did mention a couple of things that I probably wouldn't have asked, but to share it with us, I know is on your part is very generous. And let's see here.
I threw you off completely now.
I'm going to look at my notes here.
I really messed you up, huh?
No. I just kind of had it someplace. I wasn't going to neglect your family, in other words, because I know how important your family is to you, and I also know how important your church is to you. Right now, you're chairman of finance trying to raise a lot of money down there. I know that. So you give of yourself to other things besides dentistry, and again, I say I don't know how you do it in the number of hours a day that we have, because you are a busy man, and you're a young man at heart, and you have a lot of energy, and we're proud to have you as one of us, and I mean that very, very sincerely, too. But as long as we're talking about that, I have a little question here. It says, what methods have you used to keep track of things to do in your professional life?
Oh, it's very, very simple.
Very simple, okay.
I have a little pad of paper, but this little pad, and every day that as soon as anything comes up, I write it down. And as the day goes on, I check them off.
Okay.
Flip the page and keep adding as things come up.
Okay, now do you keep this pad on file?
I keep that pad on file. I have.
Okay. Now I have a friend.
I keep it on file.
I have a friend that does about the same thing, but he does it on a computer. Oh, you know who I'm talking about.
Yes, I'm aware of who you're talking about. But he likes computers.
But he keeps everything organized. Instead of a little pad, he has a room 10 by 12 filled up with software. So.
Well, like the last 2 weeks ago, I was up at a study club meeting, and 3 of the members, one said that, gee, I need to get one of these burnishers. I said, I'll get you one. So I wrote down the little note, got home, wrote it on my pad. Well, within the last week, it got mailed, you know.
Good. Okay, now you've brought up another subject we'll just go right into.
What's that?
That I know you've had work in, experience in, and in the materials and the instruments of dentistry. I know that you worked with Williams Company and with Gold and the Ney Company, and I'd like to hear a little of your experience with them, because it's directly related to dentistry, but it gets into the commercial field of developing materials for our use in foil, condensing, and also you've developed some instruments. So give us a few moments on that, Jose.
Well, essentially what I've done is share the ideas of what might work, and I've stimulated, well, in one case, the Ney Company in developing a new kind of solder. Well, new, it's been on the market for the last 30 years, I think now.
But at the time it was new.
At the time it didn't exist. And I kept trying to solder contacts on inlays and castings that every time you try to solder on a tiny little surface with a flat piece of solder, the thing would flop off. You know, it would slide off, it wouldn't stay on. So I came up with some suggestions to the company. I said, can't you develop this? And they would send me the samples, and I would try them. And finally, there is a little convex concave solder, the size of the contact area that you can get. Now, I have no patents, and I get no remuneration from any of this, so you'll know that. I'm not, it's just ideas, and they developed it, but they're still selling this material. So that one's a solder that it's about a 650 solder. You can use it for any and it's a little convex concave, round, about 1.5 millimeters in diameter. And you put it on, and it stays on that convex surface. It doesn't slide off, you know, when you put your, like a little suction cup.
Yeah.
Then you can heat it.
I thought I was the only one that had put contacts on my inlay.
Oh, heavens, I used to do them all the time.
But, you know, strangely enough, I'd take a flat piece of solder, and I'd take my pliers and I'd bend it.
Sure.
So it'd fit the contour because it fell off.
Sure, you fall, they
See,
fall.
I didn't even know you had one that fit.
May has them. It's still in the catalog. In fact, the other week I bought another box. I played the same, and but that's 30.
That's great. That's great.
Um,
And you developed some hand instruments too.
Yeah, that was, I was having some difficulty in getting good hand, there've been quite a few, but one in particular, a good hand support and rest in dealing with doing the proximal boxes for castings again. So I worked with Suter. It was, well, not Bo, but his father. And then later on with, I mean, I've known in California. Used to come to Maryland all the time, and we used their hand instruments. And I said, gee, can we get this particular hatchet and give an offset blade to it, to an angle, keeping a certain length and a certain, so that I can rest firmly on my anterior, but as I put the instrument, I get the right beveling effect without having to turn this way and turn that way. And so I can get right from the anterior with a good rest, and I can just make my cut with the flare that I need. So Suter developed a number of those, sent them for sample until I came up with the right angle, you know, the offset angle, and I said, gee, that looks great. So they're manufactured and they're done. They don't have my name on it, and except Dick Tucker calls them the Medina's hatchets, offset hatchets, in his articles. He found out, it took him years, he didn't know about it until one year he found out where they had come from. He may embarrass me.
Yeah.
But in any way, that's it. So I just have ideas that, you know, that others have been able to develop.
Well, you get involved in a lot of things. You started to say before we made a break, and I asked you about a humorous thing. You said you had a story that you were going to tell, but it was a little more lengthy than the one you told about the compound, and I don't know what you were referring to. Something about humor in your career, and it may have left you now, and I should have brought it up sooner, but it may come back. We don't worry about it.
Okay.
Unless you want.
There have been so many, you know, where they, I can tell you the students' skit night, you know, when they have, I don't know where they have them here. At Maryland, they used to really come through the stage with a big garden hose. Here comes the hose. Here comes the hose. That's me. And all the lights go out, you know, in the clinic.
Okay.
But that's the whole
Give
point.
you a good roast and a lot of good fun.
A lot of fun.
That means you're loved.
Yes,
Only those that love you can do
I don't mind it at all,
That's
so long
right.
because I'm one who dishes it out a great deal.
Yeah. Oh my! You have received so many honors, and so many. You've been recognized by so many people. Is there one? Can you get it down to one that's really in your lifetime of service to dentistry, and you've been honored, that would stand out more than any other one honor? I know it's hard to do, and
Boy, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's a tough one because I usually try to put them into two categories.
well, let's give two then.
Yeah.
One honor.
The one category is from your students.
Teaching.
You know, and that's in my life, I need to look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
One that says, here, my students across the area, you know, this is what they think and this is what they're doing. And I think probably having been recognized several times as, you know, Teacher of the Year, Outstanding Clinician of the Year, from the student body and from the senior class, to me it's more than just saying, you know, here you're who's who. I mean, that doesn't.
Yeah.
That means to me that that I've been able to. That they think enough of me, that I've shared enough with them, that they have felt comfortable and desiring
Sure.
to do better.
Understood.
And the second one would be the kind of honor that would be from your colleagues, your peers, you know. And in that one, I almost have to say that it has to be one within your discipline. You know, which in this case is operative dentistry, you know. And I think getting the George Hollenbeck Award from the Academy, to me was a real, you know, from my own colleagues, and that particular recognition, George Hollenbeck Award. Now, and I don't mean by that as that been, you know, I've received awards from state dental associations, and I've been honorary member of this, and
I understand.
And I've been recognized by doing all these things. I've received the, you know, the Guy's Award, which is an outstanding award in the American college, you know, and so on. But that's based upon all these other little things, all little pieces, and it's, and so I don't know whether that makes any sense.
Well, sure it does, because it's difficult, but you answered because these are the things that came to your mind, and so I know those are of importance to you, and much more than somebody gave you a plaque to stick up on the wall because you put in a gold foil or something like that.
Yeah, which is it's great, but that's
great,
not.
right. It's great,
you know.
but doesn't have that stature.
That stature. Now, I could say there was a third category, and that's the humanitarian aspects behind it too. But you know, but that's another, and that's.
Well, probably if you got
service,
to delving into there's probably about 6 or 8 different categories of your life.
Yeah, that's what you hate to put one as you hate to compare, you know, one that deals with service
Yeah.
rather than with achievement in research or achievement in teaching methods.
We haven't talked about your research very much. And what aspect of research did you do some work?
Oh, I did more at Maryland.
In Maryland, up in Maryland.
Than I did that I've done in Florida.
You're more
But I've done some in Florida in terms of longevity studies. In fact, Dr. Muir and I just published another article on longevity of castings in the operative journal, the last issue. In fact, I had it, the article. But in Maryland, I did studies on elastic impression materials and on epoxy resins when they were first in the initial stages. You know,
a little different now.
Entirely different, but you know, we were then looking at all these. We also did some on the use of non-carbonized gold for making pellet cylinders out of for cohesive golds. Worked closely with the Williams gold on that.
Yes.
Provided some ideas and tested and reported on that. So it's been primarily been on materials and when I was at Maryland, I used to. It's funny, you know, I was raised in an era where there were a lot of great people in dentistry. I was not at it, but I was raised with a lot of people around all over the country. And I got to know them early enough in my career that I could call them on the phone and say, hey, how do you find in this, and so on and so forth. Well, people like Ralph Phillips. Ralph and I used to carry a conversation on the phone maybe once a week from Maryland to Indiana. He was going up to the ranks, you know, when he was assistant professor, you know, and I was going through the ranks, and we used to compare research notes. I knew Skinner, Floyd Payton in materials, George Paffenberg, Jim Sweeney from the Bureau, you know, we were. But I don't see the names nowadays, you know, like I used to. Somehow I don't see the same giants coming up.
Well,
it was a fortunate thing in my life to be in that era, you know.
Well, I think you and I both have lived in the golden era of dentistry, whatever you want to call it. But It's been wonderful, and as you say, and that's the reason we have this, the giants of dentistry.
Well, I don't
why
put
we
myself
do it.
in that category, but nevertheless, I had access to those people, you know.
Well, you're remaining. You're still alive anyway. That's what.
Well, you know, and Will Eames and
Yeah,
Mark, and it was amazing how we could just make some phone conversations and clarify things in a hurry. It's been fun.
I'm trying to find a question here that I have for you. Oh, and I don't know. I know what the subject matter is, but it has something to do with your feelings about what the best material in dentistry is, as far as we have for use. And if you fool me on this one, I'm going to be completely surprised.
With what the best
What one of the finest materials we have for use in operative dentistry?
Well, if you want to look at the material that really is a proven in terms of longevity, in terms of excellence of service, in terms of ability to teach discipline to students, if you look at it from all that gamut, not just one little aspect, to me it is compacted gold, and particularly the cohesive, compacted golds, and we have about 6 of them, available combinations. But that material, if you learn how to do it properly, it has to be done properly.
Sure.
And use it judiciously where your patients can accept it and also take care of it. It's a material that will last the lifetime of the teeth, you see. And while you're learning it, you learn a certain discipline.
Right.
That you just can't avoid to become motivated to compare all other materials with that kind of marginal finish and longevity of service. And you will begin to apply that discipline. Not that you're going to learn how to do an amalgam better, don't get me, but you apply the discipline to an amalgam management or composite.
Give you the
and
very
you're bound
best.
to do better.
The very best.
And that's why, Markley has amalgams that last 80 years. Fine. But it's because he learned, how to apply those principles and do the best he can.
No,
So we've lost a lot of that when we have lost the ability to continue that process. And I still teach it, so don't get me wrong.
Oh, no.
But mine is an elective now in Florida. It's not part of the curriculum.
See, don't you think that has come about a lot with the general change in the overall community? Everything is hurry, hurry, hurry now. We have fast food, and we do this. We fast shop, and we shop by television and everything. For the patient to sit and have a compacted gold put in, they just don't want the time taken. They want to get in, and we want to have fast drive-through dentistry. I mean, I think that's getting to be the thinking of the public a lot, and it's more difficult to have them accept that in your practice, unless they've been accepting it all these years. But the new ones, no.
Well,
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
I'm not either. That's just coming off the top of
But
the head.
yes, if you generalize, I think you're right. But in my way of thinking, I cannot afford to generalize if I'm going to still try to instill upon the young graduate the need to continue. And I find that through the study club concept, we bring in new graduates as, well, let me give you an example. When they completely deleted the teaching of compacted golds at Florida in the curriculum, I offered to give an elective to the senior class. Lectures, clinical sessions, and what have you. At nights, 80% of the senior classes always enrolls in my elective. And we spend hours every week for 12 weeks at night, 3 hours at a time. On extra time, we have some special clinic sessions to learn. I also invite him to attend one of my regular study club meetings, like the George Hollenbach Study Club meeting. invariably I have between 5 and 14 of the seniors in quote my elective, which I call it a study club.
Yeah.
Hire a van or 2 automobiles, and they drive and go to the study club meeting as guests of our study club in Hollenbeck. These youngsters are amazed. They're fascinated with what they see. They begin to get to see practitioners from, well, right now I've got practitioners from 14 states who open their arms. They can go to their office anytime they want. So this is a way of saying, hey, if you want to do something more than what you're learning, want something a little better, we're here to help you.
Great.
You've got to take the first step. We'll help you, we'll guide you, we'll assist you, we'll show you. And 8 of some of those kids over the last 5 years, 8 of them Floridians, have formed a new study club. And they're working with castings and foils on their study club. So I guess the need is out there. You follow me?
I understand.
And the demand is there if we can motivate the patients too. And the only way to do that is to motivate the younger graduates. So, but we just need to have more programs to motivate the young graduate.
See, so many areas they're not taught.
They're not exposed.
They're not
to it.
exposed to it, so they
And you
don't
see,
have.
exposing the student at the school setting with one faculty who says, well, you have to do it here because it's a requirement, but you don't have to do it when you get out, that's no motivation. But I take him out of that environment and put him into private practice environment and show them through dentists from practicing from 9 different states or 14 states in some areas, and show them what their patients look like that they come in their routine practice, and see the little inlays, the pin castings, the pin ledges, the little foils, the combination of the two, inlay and then little foil, instead of making a full crown. And those kids just get so motivated that they want to learn how to do them.
That's great.
So
That's good teaching, good influence.
I guess it's teaching by example.
Sure, has to be.
And that's what a teacher has to be. He has to be a mentor as well as an example, motivator.
That's why you wanted to practice before you taught.
That's right.
It goes back to what you
But
said earlier.
I didn't know it then.
Well, you knew there was some reason.
But there was some
back in
reason
your
that I
mind.
figured that I just had to do it. I just could not, I couldn't find myself teaching and saying, well, I've never done it, but that's the way it is, you know?
Over your years in dentistry, are there 1 or 2 things in the armamentarium of dentistry that you say stand out, things that have been developed, 1 or 2 or 3 things over the last 30, 35 years that have really changed the practice of dentistry?
In the services to be rendered?
Yeah, in your service, you know.
Well, in my years, I started learning dentistry by the use of 3,000 RPMs.
I did too.
And stand-up dentistry. We didn't sit. It was a real chore. We learned, it just took us so long. So I think one of the greatest changes that changed the whole practice environment was the advancements in the high speed and the ability to cut with turbines and the ability to do it quickly. It has its disadvantages, you know, but if using it, that to me was one of the biggest things that happened. A second one, to be really honest, is the research in the adhesive systems that have tremendously affected the practice of dentistry. When I say adhesives, I'm talking about all this biological aspects of the bonding systems and what the future will hold. I haven't the foggiest, but it looks like in that area the tremendous advances will take place. I think those 2 things have changed drastically in the years that I've been, you know, in the area. Now, I know that I'm not talking about the fluoridation, but you see the sealants are part of the adhesive system. Are you with me? So that I'm looking at that in broad, not just in the narrow
Well, I was speaking of what you do right in your office. Of course, you do fluoride treatments, but
Sure.
that's been going on
For years,
for years and years.
But those two things have changed. Now, the one thing that has really affected the dental practice that is not really a technological, a service connected in that sense of material development or is infection control. That really has affected the practice. In some areas for good.
Mm-hmm.
In some areas it's an overkill, in that sense of it really has made some drastic changes in what we do. And that, of course, came about from entirely different kind of problems and challenges. But those are, to me, what really has changed the character of practice.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned composites, because when we did our interview with Ralph Phillips, of course, he was very interested and worked very diligently in doing more and more and more, better and better and better composites. And he'd say, well, by maybe the next year or two, we're going to have it all solved. He said, I've been saying that for the last 10 or 15 years, but it's going to come about one day. So
yeah.
He was a great guy.
Oh, he was. And he and I were doing programs together quite often. He would talk about materials, and I would follow up with clinical, and we used to have some fun, real little fun.
I could see.
But every 5 years he would say, by 5 years we'll have it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll have it. Bill D. one of them, but unfortunately he didn't get to stay around.
Right.
Because we might have had it sooner if he was here.
Yeah, and he may be in not so much in the composite, might be in the polymer chemistry or in ceramics or in combinations of it's just a tremendous amount in what I like to call the adhesive systems, where there is the glass ionomer combinations with tremendous things that are going on.
I want to bounce a question off of you. It's going to be coming up in the House of Delegates this year. You're in education, but this also affects you directly or indirectly with licensure and the Board of Governors, or the examining board, whatever you call it in your state. We call it the Board of Governors in our state here. A resolution has been introduced to do away with the human factor, in other words, the human candidate, not the candidate, but the patient, for the candidate to work on for licensure. And I know we had a little offhand discussion, but I'd like for you to put this on tape about your feelings of doing away with it or maintaining it.
Yes. Well, when you brought that up last night, my initial reaction was twofold. One, I said to you, and I don't mind repeating it, I said, if I look at it subjectively, I want a patient there, a live human being, to see how the candidate manages that patient, behaves diagnostically, takes care of anesthesia, etc. But if I look at it objectively, in view and in light of all the infection control, liability, responsibility post-board of that patient, and all the legal implications, I would look at it, no way, let's not do, and also from the point of view of saying, providing each candidate with the same kind of examination procedure, the equality system, then I would say we should do away with them, away with a patient, and use some form of a system that replaces the patient, where there is a computer-assisted kind of instruction or teaching, testing device, whether it is a mannequin device. We need to come up with some other mechanism. I'm just concerned that, it's easy to hold a state board with a patient, and then the patients are usually belong to that state, and candidates are coming from all over. They're not the patient's own patients. I mean, they're not the candidate's own patients.
True.
They're someone else's. Then the candidates leave, and someone is left with the responsibility of following up on that patient. Whatever the outcome, if it was well done and no harm will ever come about. But if there were some things to be corrected or changed or modified or repolished or treated or whatever it might be, who's responsible?
Yeah.
Who's liable? It ends up either an institution is liable, where the exams are held, usually it's a school.
Right.
And the schools can't afford to. Or if the candidate doesn't follow through with the infection control policies of that particular institution, not what they do in their office, then you're putting in jeopardy that whole institution. And it becomes a problem.
Well, it's something we hadn't had to face the last few years.
I think that's triggered a great deal more of this
Yes.
discussion, this infection control, and the institution has to maintain a policy in that institution. And if a candidate comes from 10 states down the road and doesn't know the policy and does things according to the way that person was taught, it is not in keeping with the institution's policy. And
Well, I think that's...
we have some problems.
and it's
I
gonna
hope
be
that
di-
answers your...
It answers the question, but it doesn't answer the problem. And it's
No,
going to be difficult.
and I don't think it's going to be very
Very
difficult.
difficult to solve. It sure is.
Because unless we had a pretty foolproof method of either computer-assisted or simulated mechanisms to test this. Now, if we're just testing, can the candidate cut a prep? You can cut a prep on a number of things. Maybe that's what we're testing. I don't know. And that's something that, as a profession, we need to face it. But
Well,
subjectively,
yeah.
I'm still feel, well, I love
Yeah.
to see that, you know, see how the patient management.
Right. How that chair-side manner is.
Yeah, yeah.
That's very important.
But is that really what we look for in the state board when we're given the licensure?
That's it.
And maybe we're not even looking at that. And if we're not, then we need to reconsider.
And then in that vein, talking about young graduates and licensure, and we discussed this a little bit on educational differences of when you began your teaching career and any big changes in education, and as we went along, then it became a differentiation between education and professionalism. We had two categories that we talked about.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed listening to you, and I want you to discuss that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think the way you asked me the question about have I seen any change in the students from what they were when we went through or back a few years ago, 60s or prior, versus now. And I try to, in my way of thinking, my experience has been that academically and intellectually and knowledge-wise and abilities, these kids are just the same or perhaps even better than what we were. Heavens, they've had more information available to them, have learned more about life than I did, and probably the majority of us. So from an academic point of view, they have the abilities and the knowledge and the know-how. Scholastically, and unless we're talking about an institution, and you always hate to generalize because you get in trouble.
Right.
Unless you're talking about an institution where they never had the applicant pool to allow them to select, you know, the best available candidate. But at Florida, we've had a pretty good pool all the way along the way, so we've been able to do that. So I've seen that. The part that, to me, has changed to some degree is that I have noticed a larger number of individuals, of candidates, who have a different kind of moral values, if that's a way of putting it, different than what we were in our time. I suspect that it's probably because of our society as a whole. We're no longer, you know, we're accepting stealing as a common day. We don't even bother. They can steal something here or there. We're looking at cheating or, you know, whatever the issue. But our moral values have sort of changed to some degree in our whole society. So I noticed that there's a greater number of students when they're working through are looking more to what can they do for themselves rather than what they can do for others. And I think that is part of that moral values, you know, in terms to me is put a different way. They have a goal here, which is becoming a dentist. A larger number are looking at, I don't care what means I use, I need to achieve that end. And it shouldn't be that way. It's extremely important that how you achieve it, because that develops you as a professional. It isn't just, let's take a shortcut here, let's use his model, let's look over his test grade, that area. Then I think there's a third factor too, and that deals to me in changing of people, that the whole society, I think, the way I can gather it, in this country has changed from a desire to always be the top, the best, to a desire to let's accept mediocrity as a standard. By that I mean that we have lowered our standards in education, we have lowered our standards in production, we have lowered our, we are not instilling into all our youth the desire to excel. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
We have accepted that mediocrity, and we don't have that stimulus or that needle saying, hey, you can do better, but this is good enough. And by the time they get to professionals, there's a larger number with that philosophy. Now, looking at it from a positive point, those are the negative. The teacher then comes into play, from my point of view, and so does the practitioner by helping out after the kids come out of school. You can try to motivate and enhance on this desire to excel. That you can work on and try to get them to do better. They've got the knowledge, they don't have the time to develop all their skills. You can help them develop the skills through study club. The only part that is difficult is the moral values, you know, but we have got to keep on trying to find a mechanism. I don't know the answer on that. Well, we need to enhance their professional values as it relates to, when they get in practice, you know, advertising and cutthroat, and what I learn is just for me, I'm not going to share. We've got to somehow continue that effort, and anything that we can do as a profession in organized dentistry, as a college, international, American, to enhance that professional values, to stimulate them would be great. But that's what I hope we can do.
That's good. We're about to wind down. I hope I can get one final thing I was going to say. If you had it to do all over again, is there any one thing that you would change that would make a dramatic difference in your life? Didn't know I was going to ask that.
No, I didn't know you were going to ask that. Bill, I don't think there's anything that I you know, you make decisions as you live your life based upon what you know at that point in time.
Right.
So long as you always make him to the best of what you can do and you can think you can do, and in the true sense of being humble about it, you know, and doing it in that way, then you can't go back and relive anything else. Right. And as far as I can remember, I've made all my decisions with the facts that I had at that point in time and did the best that I could at that given point in time. Now, I think I could have done another cavity a little different this time than I did 20 years ago, but at the time I did the best that I knew how. And I think that's the key to success to me for any youngster, and that always strive to do the best that you can. Under the given circumstances of that day, just do, under the knowledge you have, do the best you can. A year from now, that will be entirely different.
Right.
But you need to continue to learn and continue to progress. and always do for others rather than for yourself. And in the final analysis, that sharing concept, that's what life is all about.
And you shared with us today, Jose.
Oh.
I have really appreciated it.
Oh, thank you very much.
This will be a fine, fine tape for people to view, and you've put so much into it. And I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and flying here and being with us. And I just have thoroughly enjoyed the morning with you. And we want to see you again in Oklahoma sometime soon.
Okay, well, Bill, it's been I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate your thinking enough of me to ask me to do this, and I thank you, and I hope it'll be of some benefit to some other of our colleagues.
Thanks again.
Thank you.